Oh, there we go. Now we're in business.
And Mark, you're muted. What portion?
Sorry about that. We're nearing the conclusion, and we are now in. You pull up my portion. Sorry.
Vayeilech.
What's that?
Vayeilech.
You usually recorded, there are usually 2 recordings.
It should be recording now. It says it is.
He has one on Facebook and one on YouTube.
Oh, well, the one it's on Facebook. No, sorry, it's on Zoom that's recording, I believe, and then the rabbi probably will upload it at some point if he can. Okay, bear with me here while I find this section.
Vayeilech.
Yeah. It's a short portion. Okay, here we are. So we're in Vayeilech, chapter 32. I'm going to begin with verse 1, and we'll go through this rather quickly.
Isn't it
31.
31, chapter 31?
31,
Okay.
not 32.
Okay. I'm easily confused.
Yeah, me too. Moses went and spoke these things to all Israel. He said to them, I am now 120 years old. I can no longer be active. Moreover, the Lord has said to me, you shall not go across yonder Jordan. Robert, would you please continue on verse 3?
Yes. Let me get my eyes focused again here. The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy these nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord hath said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have just short readings since there aren't too many passages here. June, would you continue, please, with verse 5?
Thank you. The Lord will do to them as he did to Sihon and Og, king of Amorites, and to their countries when he wiped them out. The Lord will deliver them up to you, and you shall deal with them in full accordance with the instruction that I have enjoined upon you. Be strong and resolute. Be not in fear or in dread of them, for the Lord your God himself marches with you. He will not fail you or forsake you.
Thank you. Margot, would you please continue?
Then Moses called thank you. Then Moses called Joshua and said to him in the sight of all Israel, be strong and resolute, for it is you who shall go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their fathers to give them. And it is you who shall apportion it to them.
Thank
And the
you.
Lord,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you. David and Susan, would you continue on verse 8?
And the Lord, he it is who goes before you. He will be with you and will not forsake you. You shall not fear and you shall not be dismayed.
And Moses wrote this instruction and gave it to the priests, the sons of Levi, who were carrying the ark of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh's covenant, and to all of Israel's elders. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of 7 years, at the appointed time of the year of the remission, on the festival of booths, when all Israel comes to appear before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh your God, in the place that he will choose, you shall read this instruction in front of all Israel into their ears.
Thank you. Dave, would you please continue?
Gather the people, men, women, children, and the strangers in your communities, that they may hear and so learn to revere your Adonai your God, and to observe faithfully every word of this teaching.
Thank you. And Paul, number 13?
Thank you, Cantor. And their children who do not know, they shall hear and they shall learn to fear Hashem, your God, all the days that you live on the land to which you are crossing the Jordan to possess it.
Thank you. Jim, would you continue in verse 14?
Adonai said to Moses, "The time is drawing near for you to die. Call Joshua and present yourselves in the tent of meeting, that I may instruct him." Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tent of meeting. Adonai appeared in the tent in a pillar of cloud, the pillar of cloud having come to rest at the entrance of the tent.
Thank you. Sherry and Steve, would you please continue on verse 16?
Thank you, Cantor. The Lord said to Moses, "You are soon to lie with your fathers. This people will thereupon go astray after the alien gods in their midst, in the land they are about to enter. They will forsake me and break my covenant that I made with them. Then my anger will flare up against them, and I will abandon them and hide my countenance from them. They shall be ready prey, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. And they shall say on that day, surely it is because our God is not in our midst that these evils have befallen us."
Thank you. Kath, would you continue verse 18?
Yes, Cantor, thank you. Yet I will keep my countenance hidden on that day because of all the evil they have done in turning to other gods. Therefore, write down this poem and teach it to the people of Israel. Put it in their mouths in order that this poem may be my witness against the people of Israel. When I bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey that I promised on oath to their fathers, and they eat their fill and grow fat and turn to other gods and serve them, spurning me and breaking my covenant, and the many evils and troubles befall them, then this poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. For I know what plans they are devising, even now, before I bring them into the land that I promised on oath.
Thank you. Richard, please continue verse 22.
Thank you. That day, Moses wrote down this poem and taught it to the Israelites. And he charged Joshua, son of Nun, "Be strong and resolute, for you shall bring the Israelites into the land, which I promised them on oath, and I will be with you."
Thank you. Marty, please continue verse 24.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah, I've been promoted to rabbi. Thank you.
Rabbi, excuse me. Demoted, perhaps. Thank you.
All in favor?
When Moses had put down in writing the words of this teaching to the very end, Moses charged the Levites who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, "Take this book of teaching and place it beside the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and let it remain there as a witness against you."
Thank you. Robin, please continue verse 27.
Thank you, Cantor. "Well, I know how defiant and stiff-necked you are. Even now, while I am still alive in your midst, you have been defiant toward Adonai. How much more then when I am dead? Gathered."
Thank you. I want to give everybody a chance. Jay,
Sure.
would you please continue? 28.
Thank you. 28. "Gather to me all the elders of your tribes and your officials, that I may speak all these words to them, and that I may call heaven and earth to witness against them. For I know that when I am dead, you will act wickedly and turn away from the path that I enjoined upon you, and that in time to come misfortune will befall you from having done evil in the sight of Adonai and vexed him by your deeds."
Thank you. And Justin, will you take us home?
Thank you, Cantor. Then Moses spoke into the ears of the entire assembly of Israel the words of the following song until their completion.
And the song is obviously Ha'azinu, which will be discussed next week. But in the meantime, we really will be discussing it as well tonight. So let's see if I can pull up, for those of you who don't have a copy of the study sheet, here it comes, I hope. Yes, there it is. All right, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Great.
Sure. It's about
Well,
the stock market.
The first chart is going to upset a lot of us, but I'll talk about that in a second. The first point that I would like to talk about is Deuteronomy 31:2. Today I can no longer go or come. Well, one might think that this means that Moses' strength had ebbed, and that is why he could not longer go or come. According to Rashi, though, the scripture states regarding Moses, his eye had not dimmed, nor had he lost his natural moisture, which is referred to in Deuteronomy 34:7. Says, which teaches us that his powers were intact even on the day of his passing. So what then is the meaning of I can no longer? Here it means I am not permitted, because authority was taken from him and granted to Joshua. The eminently spiritual man that Moses was, he knew more than anyone else, despite, or more precisely, because of his spiritual greatness. He also experienced downs along the trajectory of his own life. So when Moses noticed that there were no more downs to be had and no more ups towards which to climb, he realized that he had arrived. This is one interpretation, that's it. As if to say, this is the end of the road. If there's no falling from here, that means there's no more climbing. So acknowledging that his life's mission was complete, Moses declared, I can no longer come and go. Today I will pass. Rabbi Moskowitz wrote earlier this week to me, he posed the question, is this really the end of Moses' story? Or is it the beginning of it? As we'll see, the same voice that proclaims the limits of Moses' physical journey is the same that inspires him to write a song that begins the journey again. All right, well, now let's talk a little bit about this chart. Let me say, first of all, that, first of all, Shelby Cullum Davis was a New York investment banker. I'm on number 2. He was a philanthropist, former United States ambassador to Switzerland. And when he died in 1994, Davis was the head of a firm that specialized in insurance securities that he founded in 1947 with just $100,000. And at the time of his death in 1994, he was reported to be worth $848 million. And he said, you make most of your money in a bear market, you just don't realize it at the time. So here we are, certainly in the middle of a bear market, and maybe we can take comfort in these words of wisdom, no matter if the stock market is down 25% year to date. And in these times, maybe it's worthwhile heeding the advice of a famed Hasidic master, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin. Number 3, Tzadok HaKohen was a prolific author in all areas of Judaism, halakha, Hisidut, Kabbalah, and ethics. And he also wrote scholarly essays on astronomy, geometry, and algebra, and maybe even the stock market. When he wrote, every person experiences ups and downs in life. It's the nature of the world baked into the DNA of humanity. There will be downfalls, and together with the fall comes the promise that there will be a significant climb. So I've included this picture of the S&P 500 over the period of most of our lifetimes. When I was a stockbroker, I used to show this chart to my potential clients. So we realize that all their dips along the way, we see the dips in this chart. And some of them are really quite frightening. We're in the middle of one right now. But the overall trajectory has always trended up. I wanted to share now the different expressions of communication that are being shared by Moses. I think it's pretty fascinating because he talks about 3 ways in which these words were spoken. The first is Moses went and spoke these words, and that's how our Torah portion opens up. And then a few verses later, it says, Moses wrote this Torah and gave it to the Kohanim and to all the elders of Israel. And then finally, towards the end, he says, Moses wrote this song on that day and taught it to the children of Israel. So it's fascinating that we have Moses speaking words. We have him writing words, which are here translated as writing a Torah. And this is something that he gives to the elite of the community, the Kohanim, the elders. And then finally, he writes a song, and it's the song that he teaches to all the people of Israel. So I was referring to 4a, 4b, and 4c, all the three different ways in which this song was communicated. The second one, 31:19 in Deuteronomy, it is said that the 613th mitzvah of the Torah is based on this. It is the obligation for each of us to write a Torah scroll, according to Maimonides. It says, now therefore write down for yourselves this song and teach it to the children of Israel. Place it in their mouth so that this song may be a witness for me among the children of Israel. At my former synagogue at Temple Beth Shalom in Santa Ana, we had an opportunity. Members of the congregation each had an opportunity to scribe a single letter in the Torah scroll as a fulfillment of this commandment. It's really a very beautiful custom for many communities, the commission of writing a Torah.
Temple Israel did that also.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And by doing so, then we fulfilled this commandment. The concluding commandment in Deuteronomy 31:22 is that we are to take up this song and sing it. But what is the nature of this song? Is it a song of victory, like we read in Shirat Hayam, which marks not only the completion of the Exodus, but also our total independence from Egypt? Is this what the song that we're about to do is about? Hardly. If you were to take a few moments and read just a few passages of Ha'azinu, and it's okay if you want to just skip ahead and look at it briefly. Take a few moments, just browse through the text, and then we'll talk about it in a few moments. But please do so at the moment right now if you can.
Mark, does that begin with Deuteronomy 32?
It does. Give ear, O heavens, let me speak.
Yes.
Yeah, Ha'azinu. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but take a couple of minutes and just go through it and just give me a sense of the impression that you get about this so-called song.
Cantor, would you move up the sheet?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So if you've had a chance to just kind of get a sense of the subject matter, well, let me ask you, do you think the song is harmonious?
Not in the Torah.
Not at all. In fact, you could say that it's not the least bit harmonious. In fact, it's very dissonant. And why is that? Well, the generation of the desert, after receiving the Torah, should have conquered the land within the first year. Had this come true, had the people not sinned, then the next Shirah, this Ha'azinu, should have been the idyllic one, that of the conquest of the promised land with Moshe as their leader. Instead, that generation and the next one squandered the opportunity to do so. 40 years later, as they finally prepare to enter the land, their situation remained far from ideal. So the Shirah that should have been sung is now replaced with a more realistic one. Or you could even say a pessimistic one, because Shirat Ha'azinu is tailored to God's downbeat forecast of what will happen to Bnei Yisrael when they finally enter the land. Then there's this question of whether or not, number 6, this song is or is not the entire Torah. And in the Gemara, which is a rabbinic commentary on and the interpretation of the collection of Jewish law known as the Mishnah, In the Gemara, the rabbis say the verse is referring to the Song of Haazinu alone and not to the rest of the Torah. But then they go on to state that the continuation of that verse, quote, that this song may be a witness for me among the children of Israel, it does indicate that the reference is to the entire Torah in which the mitzvot are written. I think the song deals with our self-inflicted battles in the wilderness, and it reminds us of our own internal struggles. But the rabbis say that it's more than just a song. It's really the entire Torah. It's a recapitulation of our ongoing struggle to become our best selves. They say that we're to fulfill ourselves and regain our sense of alignment and direction by singing this song. So if we're going to explore what is the content of this song that Moses teaches to everyone, number 7 of the study sheet, there's some commentary from a 19th century rabbi known as the Netziv, which is an acronym for Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Volozhin in Belarus, where he served as a rabbi for 40 years. And the Netziv was born in 1817. He died in 1893. He was a great scholar and much beloved. So this is a very fascinating bit of commentary from his time. He wrote at one point that there's a distinction between poetry and prose. In poetry, the subject matter is not plainly set forth as in prose. Additional explanations are necessary in order to indicate the allusions condensed into each expression. Such is the nature of Torah. Its story is not elaborated. It requires additional explanations in order to appreciate its allusions.
Yes.
But why call the Torah a song? A song is a poem that has a through line. It has a melody attached to it. My opinion as a cantor is that in order to pass our faith and a way of life to the next generation, it must sing. The Kabbalists teach us that without a language containing images that are fluid and constantly in motion, we can't even begin to perceive reality. And that is music, the interplay of notes and time. Torah must be affective, not just cognitive. It must speak to our emotions. Some of you have read the works of Antonio Damasio. He's a very well-known author who writes a lot about neurobiology, but he wrote a book called Descartes' Error. And he says through the reasoning part of the brain, though it's the reasoning part of the brain is central to what makes us human, it is the limbic system, which is the seat of the emotions, that leads us to choose one way and not another. And by the way, I'm sorry we didn't bring in this element of feeling and emotions into our discussion last week when we talked about determinism and free will. Maybe this is a conversation we could have in the future. Still very intrigued with this discussion that we had last week on free will. So anyway, if our Torah lacks passion, we will not succeed in passing it on to the future. Music is the effective dimension of communication and the medium through which we express and evoke and share emotion. And precisely because we are creatures of emotion, music is an essential part of the vocabulary of mankind. Which brings me to the master of conveying emotion through song, the incomparable Frank Sinatra, whom I had the pleasure of meeting, by the way, and even sang for in Palm Springs many, many years ago. That's another story.
And there's Taylor too.
Yeah. When I read this week's Torah portion, all of a sudden, it's very funny. I began to hear playing in the background of my mind the soundtrack of Frank Sinatra's famous rendition, My Way. But then, now I imagine Moses singing it. And then, of course, I have to change a few critical words. Namely, instead of singing, I did it my way, Moses sings, I did it God's way. But otherwise, you see what I did here with Frank Sinatra's My Way. Otherwise, I actually thought the song fit extremely well. The one portion, the one that perhaps should be changed, is at the very end where he sings, To say the things he truly feels and not the words of one who kneels, that really didn't seem to fit Moses' situation too well.
Is Paul Anka Jewish?
What's that?
We're muted, ignore.
Oh, okay.
But no, I don't think Paul Anka is Jewish.
So if anyone can come up with a better substitution for, and not the words of one who kneels, you'll get a special prize. Maybe I'll even send you a free copy of my book, Sinatra's Tailor. Finishing up, number 9. It is with a poetic sense of closure that Moses's life ends with the command to begin again in every generation, writing our own scroll, adding our own commentaries, the people of the book, endlessly reinterpreting the book of the people and singing its song. The Torah is God's libretto, and we, the Jewish people, are God's choir. Collectively, we have sung God's song. We are the performers of God's choral symphony. That was from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. He was a very illuminating figure in Great Britain. So that concludes my thoughts. And as always, I'm always very, very interested in hearing what you have to say. Now we're all on screen without the...
Mark, one quick question. What verse does the poem end?
It begins
With
chapter
1,
32,
right?
and it ends, Hazinu ends, I believe it's verse 43 would be the end
Okay,
of it.
okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
if you have a chance to go through it.
Next week.
Next week, yeah. Thoughts?
Steve, did you want to just say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Steve?
Yes, on your S&P 500, the time frame seems to be too short, and it doesn't include things like the Spanish plague and COVID and climate change and things like that.
No. It goes all the way. It goes all the way to basically last week. It's even worse this week. But no, I mean, I set this up for basically 75 years, which is pretty much my lifespan. Did you want it to go back further?
Well, yes, and also into the future with climate change. Everything you hear about it, it's almost like the end of the world.
So you have the opinion that it's not going to keep on going in an up trajectory.
No.
Okay.
I think it's going to take a big nosedive. And with Putin threatening with nuclear weapons, what if we have a thermonuclear war?
Well, that's a scary thought.
It certainly is.
Are you sorry I put up that chart?
No, it's provocative. It makes you think about these things.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Paul.
Yeah, there's some dips.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, on the song where at number 5, where the corruption is not his, the blemish is his children's, the perverse and twisted generations. That's kind of a sad thing to be singing when you think about, the God is not taking any of the problems as his fault, but those other people down there who've been depending on him, well, he's not too happy with them. And, they're perverse and they're twisted. Well, yeah, not too good. So, I mean, Frank Sinatra usually is a crooner, and he usually made people feel nice. But how do you make that line in that song make people feel nice?
Turn to the Haftarah.
Say that again, Richard.
Turn to the Haftarah for the portion for today.
Oh, that's a good idea. And tell us what we would find in that Haftarah.
It's all going to be good. It's Isaiah.
Okay.
I threw you away in anger, I'll bring you back in love.
Okay.
To me,
Is there any hope at all in this?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
In today's portion, in 31:12, gather the people so you can hear what I say and learn to revere. Now that's a feeling. That's not a deed. That's an internalization. And he's telling us you're going to go on and follow these other gods and do all this stuff, but your children, teach it to your children every day, talk to your children. And in time, they'll learn the reverence. And it's by reverence, not that God is separate and not taking responsibility, but that there's no separation. And are we here to make a just and happy and ever Edenic material universe? Or are we here in this narrow bridge to not be afraid and gain some reverence and thereby experience the unity? What is our goal? If our goal is the Aristotelian goal of empiricism and gaining profit and keeping the signal going up and up, little dips and up. And I saw your chart, and I thought, well, do we get closer to unitive understanding of the Godhead and then fall back down? Is that the nature of what's going on? Or is this simply an economic boring chart?
That's interesting.
And I think the term reverence, I mean, we've been doing this for 52 weeks. And do we start out with rules that we follow? But what happens as we grow? Do we get more information? And is this COVID thing and this existential situation more opportunity to gain a better understanding of how to be hopeful, joyful, just with one another, and not to complain or search for money or fight our enemies? We're in a terrible time now, and we have a great opportunity to be mindful of how, boy, this can upset us, and boy, we think God's given us a bad break, and somebody's stealing our money. Or we can go, you know what? I'm going to sit on my perch and watch this play itself out and recognize that I don't have to manifest those childish urges and desires which are still dawn in me and exercise my free choice. And I think it takes a lifetime to get to that point. And I think that's what the Torah is telling us here. And just lastly, this word revere in verse 12 of chapter 12, verse 12 of 31, that's the whole business here, is learning reverence. And reverence is an internal platonic feeling. It's not the acting out of a particular rule or a particular ceremony. That's enough.
Thank you. And I always appreciate your larger perspective on things. It's great. And also, I think what you were saying today was sort of a continuation of some of the hopeful words you were saying about the generation in the future, that even though we may not be able to accept it and behave the way we should this generation, let's not give up on the future one. Let's have
the
hope.
idea is to keep alive a vision of the world redeemed. Right. And you can't do that if you're just pissed off all the time.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, Catherine.
Although I'm pissed off a lot of the time.
Could never know it. Catherine, go ahead.
Just to follow up, I was struck by this line in 31:21. And so we have these evils befalling people because they spurned Adonai and broke his covenant. And this line, then this poem shall confront them as a witness, since it will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. I was really struck by that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in fact, again, I sometimes get a little bit upset with the English translation because I'm going to look at the Hebrew word for that. Hold on just a second. Sometimes they use the word, instead of confront, they use the word against. And in fact, I think a couple of weeks ago, I think the rabbi even talked about the fact that he didn't view that expression confront or against as the proper expression
Okay.
Because it yeah, it distorts it. And again, I always say this, but I get so frustrated with the English translation. It's like in the very beginning, when he says, yeah, that I can no longer be active. But where does that come from? Be active. That's not in the Hebrew. So translation is sometimes difficult, and I can understand why that might be puzzling. But I think it's just our frustration and not really getting the full meaning.
But does witness work? That keyword witness?
I think that's a much better.
Yes.
That's probably what we would like to hear.
Yes. Okay.
Not so confrontational.
This more literal translation says this song will testify as a witness in front of it.
Go.
Because it won't be forgotten from its seed's mouth, it being the people.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wish that we could all be experts in Hebrew so we'd be able to really decipher so many different meanings from these words. David and Susan?
So also in terms of being encouraging, I felt like the beginning was where it says, do not fear and do not dread them, for the Lord your God, he it is who goes with you. He will not let go of you, and he will not forsake you. That's verse 6. Sorry, I'm reading Alter.
Okay, tell us which chapter you're on again now.
31:6.
31:6. Okay, right. But this is before the poem.
Right.
Yeah.
What just struck me about the poem was if you take a course in public speaking, you're told you tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them, and then you summarize it. So we had the Torah, and then we had Deuteronomy, and then we have the song.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. Oh, okay. Thank you. Robert.
So, Martin, I think Kath R. and Martin both had their hands up before me. It's hard for you to see everybody.
All right. Then I'm going to go to Kath and I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Good, yeah.
And then I'll go to you, Martin.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Mark. I just wanted to be sure we also brought in the painting that Rabbi had sent us in the email, the lovely circular stairway. One of the things I love with it is that lots of times when you're looking down a stairway like that, it gets very dark at the bottom. And this one doesn't. And so I thought that was a lovely aspect of it. And also the whole circular aspect of what's going on right now, which is, and I think 2 portions ago, but it was talking about how even if you guys totally screw up and you go to the dark side and do all of that, if you choose to come back, you will be welcomed back. And to me, that's a circular exploration of being in it, everything's cool. I mean, think of like an addiction process where somebody is addicted to something, they're going through recovery, and generally there's a going back to the addiction because you think you're cool, you think you've got it, and then you realize, no, I have to actually work harder on this than I did. So the circular aspect of that, the circular aspect about this is we come to the end of Torah, which I'm still learning all this, but I mean that the end of Torah is also read with the beginning of Genesis, the same time. So it's that linking those aspects together. And then in a different way with the bulls and the bears, that's still got almost a circular flow to it of the down and the up and the down and the up more and all of that. So there's all of that has flow. And I think that motion is what's so helpful with all of this. It's not static. We're not stuck anywhere. We can always work on these things. We can always work on our midah. We can always do all of these things and grow and improve. The whole, atonement and repair that is part of this time. It's not just something broken and it can never be fixed, it's that there's the opportunity for repair. So I just find this all tied in with what we're reading.
Thank you so much. I know the rabbi would be pleased that you commented on that. That photo was really beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And the reason that he didn't put the stock market, it wasn't because he didn't want to. He just somehow couldn't transfer it. So this was a good alternative and gave us an opportunity to look at portion in a different way. Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Marty, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just briefly, just to follow up on what Kath was saying. When I looked at that picture, it reminded me instantly of an ammonite, which is a very ancient. We see it now in fossils. So it's a very basic sort of form that keeps on sort of growing. You can tell that there are actually staircases because at the very top there, but otherwise, if you look at just the form, the overall form, it really looks just like an ammonite. But the thing I really wanted to say was, it's a simple idea, but I thought it was pretty profound about endings and beginnings. That, of course, every ending then can serve as a beginning. We're talking here in this passage about the end of Moses's life. And it's sad, of course, that it's ending, but it opens up a much broader beginning of his teachings. So his teachings actually become probably maybe greater than his life itself. So the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, then becomes the life that goes on after him. So that's the I had.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That could be another interpretation of, this whole thing of now I can no longer come and go. This is all I can do. I'm giving it to you now, and it's going to be even greater. Yeah, thank you.
I want to respond to that. I think you're absolutely right on in that this is Rosh Hashanah, and what have we got in 10 days? We've got return. And that's our cycle. We go up that spiral staircase. We come to the end, which is our new beginning, and to return and rededicate and get to a higher level. There'll be fall offs, but pretty soon we'll be really rich.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, Robert, I guess now it's your turn. Thank you.
Thank you. I've learned that the stock market, at least the S&P, is a religious experience, which is good. We love the humor. I want to go back to the very first comment. It was the comment that Richard made. So I don't know how long I've been participating. I've loved every session. When I read this, it's about the heart. It's not about an intellectual understanding. It's about arising and struggling to be in God's image. In other words, to use our free will, to have attributes, all the attributes that we find, for example, in the Torah. You find them in other religions as well. But, this is ancient text that has truth. Intellectually, if we explore it, it's interesting, but it doesn't change the world. We need a balance, like a teeter-totter, if you will. But the passion, the fire, the drive is how can I make my life better? How can I, if I'm a Jew, I'm a Baha'i. As a Baha'i, my whole life is for Baha'u'llah. If I'm a Jew, for me, I'm going to say my whole life is for Moses. What did he ask of me? If he is the rising sun to share the sunshine of truth, if I believe that, then how can my life not be passionate about extracting what is in here to make my life better? And I think everyone here is doing that in their life. Don't misunderstand me. But that's why I wanted to go to Richard's comment, because what I heard there was the heart. The heart and the head, we have them both, like 2 eyes, 2 ears. Heart being understanding, head, if you will, being knowledge. They're very, very different. A person can be very knowledgeable and have very little understanding. So that's just what I want to bring attention to. And I see this in every reading, especially in Deuteronomy. Again and again and again, turn to thy Lord. Turn to thy Lord. Listen to me. do you hear me? Do you hear me? So anyhow, that's what I wanted to share, and I appreciate the experience of the S&P. I will never look at it the same.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's wonderful to have the balance we have in our group. That's what.
Okay, good. Marty, did you have something else to follow up?
Yeah,
on?
I just wanted to respond to Robert. I've enjoyed everything that you have said, Robert, and I think you really add to our group. I will respectfully disagree with what you just said. I think one of the big differences between Judaism and some of the other religions is that we don't pray to Moses. He's not the focus of our life. With Christianity, Jesus replaces God, or sometimes it's Mary and she replaces God. And the Baha'is have their one person that they pray to. We don't do that. We have one God and we don't pray to any of the prophets.
You know, I agree.
Well,
I want
hold
to
on,
say,
let me-
I
let
agree
me
with you
just-
with
hold
where
on,
you're.
Richard, hold on.
Hold on just a second.
No, just as a correction, I've been a Baha'i over 50 years. We pray to God. We can pray to God directly. We can pray to God through Baha'u'llah if we choose. And with Christians, I would say if somebody's a true Christian, if they look at the early history of Christianity, the first 100 years, you would not recognize it from Christianity today. They didn't even have the Trinity. So, but thank you. I loved your comment. Thank you so much. That was very
Yes,
clarifying.
Mark, you talked about Frank Sinatra and not doesn't have the prayers of a man who kneels.
Uh-oh, I think you're going to get my book. Here you go.
Well, I mean, one can say that he's saying, God is inside you. You don't have to kneel. He's not separate from you. There's no him and you. You're not even there. When you're open, the divinity comes through you and your actions are just because you're in a state of reverence. And that's what he's saying. I don't have to pray for, pray is not to get God's attention and get reward. Pray is what you get to do for joy. It's not asking for something. It's not making obeisance to somebody. It's what it is.
It's too bad you can't ask Frank what he meant.
Well, I don't even know if Frank knows what he meant, but
No,
I'm just saying.
I don't even know who wrote the song. That's an interesting.
He's not kneeling before any other golden calf.
And I watched
concept.
I watched the rabbi and two cantors prostrate themselves in front of the Torah on Rosh Hashanah. So
there you go.
They do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say,
but my knees don't allow it anymore.
Yeah. And in Amsterdam, you laid yourself on the lintels of the.
That's right.
Of the shul when you got excommunicated, if you wanted to stick around and get walked upon. So there's a lot of customs that really don't make any sense.
No, very true.
There's
Uriel da Costa. Okay.
In this more
and Spinoza's dad.
Why he wasn't punished that way.
No.
No. He died in natural causes. You're thinking of Uriel da Costa.
I know him as well, but that was later.
No, Michael Spinoza died of natural causes.
The old man?
Yeah, he did.
I have to go look at my text.
Check it out. Okay.
You're not gonna just believe the cantor.
He's welcome to challenge me anytime. All of you.
Well, no, I'm happy to learn something new, but I'll look my source up here.
Please do.
There's in this more literal translation of the Hebrew, there's half a dozen times maybe, or a dozen times it says you shall fear your God, or fear God, which doesn't get translated that way in some of our translations, but it brings up the fact that to moderns, fear of God doesn't ring good bells, it rings bad bells, which is related to your problem with kneeling, I think.
Thank you.
But I suddenly had a picture this time when I've wrestled with that, for years and years, that now kind of evaporate from a consciousness, but how the fear of God puts you into more of a Richard Kramer kind of place, which doesn't have the negative connotations. The connotation is that you've lost yourself, that you've become ultimately humble, that you concede that you don't understand everything, that there's something bigger and much closer to what we mean when we say awe, but our portion of awe has this Western idea of individualism where, nobody's above me or below me, we're all equal, etc. And I'm not going to look at God as as a king, that's or as the master, etc. But I think that the real thing that happened to people that were writing this and reading this was just this loss of ego, this loss of, it's all about me.
Interesting. Thank you. Justin.
Thank you. Kath, your hand is up. So
I missed it again. Okay. Justin, if you just hold on a second. Kath, please.
This is super short with regard to Who Wrote My Way. It was originally a French song, but the English version was written by Paul Anka. And the words in the English version are not terribly related to the original French song. That's all.
Not related to French? Really?
No, the French song, it says the English lyrics were written by Paul Anka and are unrelated to the original French song.
Totally unrelated?
It just says unrelated.
Unrelated. Interesting. Well, I did not know that. Now that you mention it, I remember that Anka wrote that for him. Yeah.
And my wife thought Anka must be Jewish.
But he's not.
He's Greek, I think, isn't he?
Canadian.
Isn't he Italian?
I don't know. Okay. Now, Justin.
Beginning of wisdom is the fear of God.
Yirat Hashem, right? That's, it's so pervasive throughout religion to give the divinity the most terrifying contrary components of behavior. And I would think of Kali in Hinduism.
Ooh.
I think of Yamantaka in Tibetan Buddhism.
Yes.
And that divinity has to carry, and when I read the Torah, I am terrified through and through, pretty much. It's terrifying. So, but then there's Ahava Hashem and Ahava B'nai Israel. We're sitting here in some way as a community to carry that love. I don't think it's like Yirat B'nai Israel. There's nothing that I've ever read pretty much about. Aside from unless you're going against the B'nai Israel, but for the most part, that sense is that the community brings in the present moment the loving kindness of the divinity, and we can look at something that is an absolutely terrifying document of what human beings have to go through in order to raise consciousness. It's the core of anything that's Abrahamic, and that's Islam, Christianity, all of it. But the divinity gets the most terrifying parts of the personality.
I think I understand better what you mean by terrifying now. You've mentioned that before, and I think you've made it even clearer now. Thank you. Susan?
And I just wanted to share with everyone, Robert Alter claims, spent years translating the Torah and all the Tanakh. And his intent was to translate it as perfectly as he could. And he felt that in doing that, he also translated a lot of the poetry. He felt that we had lost some of the poetry by translating it differently. And so in verse 2, where you said something about not being active anymore or something.
Yeah, that's not what Friedman says.
So what Alter says,
yes,
I can no longer sally forth and come in, which sounds like I can no longer go forward and cross the Jordan. God has told me I can't.
Right.
I can no longer sally forth and come in.
Yeah, and that's basically an echo to Rashi's comment that Joshua is doing it. I'm not allowed to go forward. I think, yeah, but in more modern terms. Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
That's enough. I want to talk to you anyway.
Margot had her hand up. Margot, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to go to the think of it in a secular way. Our relationship with God is very schizophrenic. He loves us one minute, he punishes us the next. And in one verse, we're adored. In the next verse, we're castigated. And it's back and forth, and it's very schizophrenic.
What's that word?
It makes us schizophrenic.
Oh, okay.
How do you think he feels?
Yeah. Well, and it's a mutual. It's a mutual. We behave and then we're good. We behave and then we're good. God loves us and then he punishes us. He loves us and then he punishes us. It makes you schizophrenic. So it's schizophrenic.
Well,
Which
I
is the
think it
word.
probably is, it's more like the chart. It's more bipolar than
Yeah.
schizophrenia. Depression,
So
elation.
it's just parental.
Insane
It's not-
depression.
Parent-child relationship, right?
Yeah. It makes a child. Unstable.
Yeah. And how else is a community going to speak about these untenable conditions that we're all facing?
Unstable.
Well, everybody had a father that when sales are good, he comes home and it's in great shape. And if sales are bad, nothing to do with you, you get hell.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the idea of God and father sometimes go together.
I don't know. My dad just came home and quietly drank.
Oh.
Get off this.
My goodness. What a group. You really are. Well, our time has reached the end. And once again, I can't thank you enough for the group that you are, the people that you are, the love that you have for Torah and for one another. It's becoming more and more apparent to me every week. I do miss Rabbi Moskowitz. I know he would love to be with us, but as you can well imagine at this point, he needs to be with his family. I don't know whether we'll be meeting next week.
Yeah.
I will be, Yom Kippur will be over. We'll see if I have the time to prepare. If I don't, I don't know, maybe somebody else might want to come forth and do this, but that would be up to Rabbi Moskowitz. But in any case, I wish you all a Gemar Chatima Tova, and that you have a beautiful, productive, and a healthy new year.
And an easy fast.
A meaningful
and a
fast.
meaningful fast.
Fast.
Yes.
Thanks again.
Gemara Hatima Tova.
Gemara Hatima Tova.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful study.
Good night.
Night.
It's a wonderful study. Thank you.
Makes us think.
Makes us, yeah, happy new year to all of you.
Happy New Year.